And
Okay, got it.
in the finished version, the camera is really going to be on you, so I won't. You'll be able to see me, but I won't really be laughing or anything, even if you're funny.
I'm just
Um,
trying to. Does the reflection off the frame things in the background bother you or no?
I think it's okay. Does that look okay to you, Arden?
If it doesn't bother you, I'm fine with it.
I would move it up to the hair.
Let's see. Can you move it up just a tad?
Um, I really can't because we
Okay.
already rigged
That's
this
good.
thing.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's
Like I
good.
would be just holding it.
Yeah.
That work?
Yeah.
I
As
think
long as
it's
you don't move it
okay.
during the interview, we'll be great.
Okay.
Um, so you've done this before, it sounds like, but it's just like radio. Just finish your sentences. This is not live while we're talking right now, and we'll talk for about
Okay.
20 minutes or so, and then we'll edit it down to about 3.
Awesome. I like that.
So, yeah,
Yeah, that's always good.
nice. It's
So
the
are you
easiest way.
you're with Kirkus?
Yeah, I'm the editor.
Okay. Oh, wow. Very nice
Yeah,
to meet you. Not
nice
that
to
it
meet you
wasn't
too.
before, but that's impressive.
Yeah. Um,
So
so
thank
let
you for
me.
doing that.
Oh yeah. No, congrats on the book,
Oh, thank you.
and congrats. I'm going to ask you about this later, but congrats on being so prolific. That's like there's so many
Oh,
writers I know who wish that they could publish more frequently. So
you know, it's funny that you say that because I lament the fact that I'm not in that. Well, I can't write a book a year, but
yeah,
I did that for a little while, and I recognized that I couldn't keep that pace and still write books that I felt were equal or better than the one before it.
yeah,
So I had to go to every other year, but I was feeling kind of
right,
insufficient. So thank you for calling me
right.
prolific.
Yeah. Um, well, hey, just this morning I was on an NPR program on Point, which strangely was about Texas books. So let me ask you, while I have Texas books on the brain, why set this new one in Texas?
Um, hold on one second. I'm just gonna
Okay.
don't judge this you based on this slow start, but you don't have to stay here for this. It'll probably be better. I just told my assistant she doesn't have to stay here for this.
Okay.
Okay, that was all. Yeah. Okay. So, uh, hold on one second. You should have told me it was live. I would have nailed it. Just kidding. Okay. As soon as okay. Bye, Kate. Thank you. Okay. Uh, as soon as I made the decision to set the world in the book of the set the book in the let me start over. As soon as I made the decision to set the book in the world of college football, I felt that Texas was a very logical choice for the setting. It's such a rich backdrop. It almost brings another character to the story, and so it really worked for this one.
And so that's great because one of the things that I liked is that you do a nice job, I think, of playing against type and against convention because we have Shay who is just like a rabid sports fan, but on the outside she's a nice Southern girl, and I guess we don't think of all nice Southern girls as being rabid sports fans. And then there's Lucy who, right at the moment of her mom's death should be, probably accommodating and nice and accepting of the people who want to give condolences to her mom, but she is just mean as hell. So I like it that you play against type, and it's felt to me like you had some fun with that. Was that fun for you to play with?
It was. You know, I really try when I create characters not to, paint with these strokes of black and white and make people. And I think I try to make them very realistic. And I think we're all good people, or most of us are good people trying to do the right thing, and yet we, inevitably, uh, you know, as Lucy did, yes, her mother was being buried. Bark at people, and she didn't necessarily handle everything graciously, as she was raised in this genteel Southern Texan background. But yes, I mean I think that I did enjoy playing with those characters, and I think Shay, in particular, one of the things that I was cautioned against in the very early stages at the editorial level of just how do you think your readers will receive, this character who's so sports obsessed, and how do you feel about writing a book set in the world of college football, and do you think your demographic will be okay with that? And my first reaction was that women love sports. I think there's a lot of women out there who are very passionate about sports they play and the teams they support. So I didn't see that necessarily as an issue. And beyond that, I think it's important to remember, and for me to remind my editor, that even though it was set in this world of college football, it's a relationship-driven story. And it covers all those nuances of relationships that I think that readers have come to appreciate in my writing and look for. And I think this is another example of that. People just doing the best they can.
Yeah. But so, what about you? Did you like doing the research into football?
I did. I'm a big college sports fan myself. I went to Wake Forest and got the job as the manager of the basketball team before I was accepted at the university. So I'd written to several college coaches asking if I could be the manager of the team. So it was, and the thing that was so significant about that experience wasn't, any particular game or, going to the NCAA tournament, or it was more the relationships that were formed as a result of this, and how I think sports, people of very different backgrounds are brought together because of sports, and you have this this common goal that's again, it forms this very cohesive force and this bond with people who wouldn't necessarily spend time together otherwise. And so I always wanted to set a book in this very rich world, and this one I felt worked because initially I brainstormed many different settings, but I think because loyalty is such an important theme, and the tests of loyalty and this intense passion for what you're doing and following your passion, I felt that it really worked for the one and only.
Yeah. Well, I was really.
What? Did I answer your question about I didn't answer your question specifically about research, so let me answer that one real quick. And you can edit me cleverly.
Okay.
It's so weird to look at the dot when I'm instead of you, but it looks better to look at the whole, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not making eye contact with you, like I have Asperger's or something. So the research. So I even though I'm more of a college basketball fan, I love college football too. I did have to do some research because I wasn't that in depth. I wasn't so familiar with the sport as I am, say, with college basketball. But I did go down to Texas. I spent some time there. The SMU football staff was wonderful and allowed me to spend some time with the team and observe spring practice. And I have several friends who played college football, and so I talked to them and made sure that everything checked out. You're getting fuzzy. Is that okay? Did we freeze? Are you okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, we're doing fine. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, there's like a delay there. Yeah. But one interesting thing is that I had, can you hear me now? Okay. You're like delayed and blurry, but okay. One interesting thing that happened is I sent the finished manuscript to several notable figures in sport. Coach Pat Dye, of course, a legend at Auburn. Coach Boeheim, who what's the second winningest active basketball coach now, and I sent it to them to make sure that the coaching part seemed authentic, and that they sort of bought the aspects of the story that related to the NCAA investigation and some of the leadership roles of being a major coach at a major program. And they read them, and they gave me their notes and their feedback, and said that I did a good job with that. Actually, Coach Dye said, "I want to know how a Yankee from Chicago knows so much about college football." So that was high praise from him. But very quickly after they gave me those notes, they segued quite naturally, without my asking them, into the relationships of the story. So they both talked about Ryan, and that he was trying to be a good guy, and Coach Dye really talked about the daughter Lucy and how trying it is on your immediate family when you're a coach at that level, and how he really could understand, even though she came across as being a certain way, he understood her. He said he understood Ryan because he had a similar father. He was raised by a similar father, and Coach Boeheim was really funny because he really wanted to parse apart the relationship between Shay and Lucy, and I don't think it's fair, the ultimatum that was given, and so forth. And finally, I had to cut him off and say, Coach, I really appreciate your feedback, but I didn't really need you for that part of the story. I just wanted you to check out the NCAA investigation. So, but it reminds us, I think, that
right, you're turning.
Sports don't belong to women any more than or to men any more than relationships belong to women. And so I think there's a universality and a relatability to the story.
Right. You're turning football coaches into book critics.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Very unlikely book critics.
That's my job.
Yeah, that's right. I'll tell them you said that.
Well, one of the pleasant surprises for me, I don't know why this was a surprise exactly, but there was more humor to your work than somehow I thought there would be, and I does that come naturally for you? Why is humor a sort of crucial element of your work?
You don't think I'm funny?
I do. I just in all the reviews, it didn't really come across to me.
No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I mean, I think that again, I think some characters are funny and some aren't, and I try to make everyone have the same sort of level of humor. I felt that Miller was. He amused me. Sometimes he was intentionally trying to be funny. Sometimes you were laughing at him. But, I think it breaks up a story to have characters like that, especially when the backdrop might be a little bit more somber. And again, I think as a writer, you try to mix it up with different scenes and different characters. So, but thank you. I definitely think it's readers like humor. So. I'm glad that came across. Thank you.
Yeah. So you seem to me like somebody who does a good job of responding to her fans, and I was curious how how they respond to your work, and do they give you feedback, and if so, do you incorporate that into your future work, or?
That's let me think about that for a second. The interaction with my readers is very important to me, and whether it's the talking to them briefly, as they come up to have their book signed at a signing, or emails that they'll send messages on Facebook, or a lot of Facebook interaction is important to me. And I think it's the fact that writing is so solitary, and creating this world is really. It's a solitary existence. It's you're very isolated when you're writing it. So it's nice to be able to interact once the book is written and really hear the feedback from the readers. So absolutely, those relationships with my readers are very important to me as a writer. And there's yes. That said, I think that there's a danger in worrying too much about what they think, because you want to write a book that makes people, or I want to write a book that makes people think, and that makes people perhaps a little bit uncomfortable, especially because my stories are so relationship driven. So a lot of the conflict in my stories arise from the relationships, not necessarily a straight the plot thickens, but the way that the people come together in the scenes and in the story, and how the story unfolds. And so I think sometimes people gauge this, they can feel uncomfortable by the choices that my characters make, and they can feel some discomfort with the actual relationships. And in this one, I think I really press those boundaries. although it's interesting because something borrowed, the work that many people have, my first novel, obviously most people have identified me with that, associate me with that story and the movie and so forth, is about a woman falling in love with her best friend fiance. So to me, you can't get much more taboo than doing that. And yet I felt that there was a stronger reaction in some ways to the story and the central relationship in The One and Only. Which did surprise me, but it didn't necessarily upset me because I liked the fact that people had varied reactions and that some people felt that it was very wrong and they were much more judgmental and about that relationship, and others were more accepting of it, and I think that's true to life. So I enjoy pressing those limits, and I think if you worry too much about pleasing your readers and not making anyone uncomfortable or not upsetting anyone, then you might come away with a bit of a bland story, and I don't want that to happen to my writing.
Right. Well, speaking of true life, I want to hear more about like being a lawyer and sort of realizing, that it was time to to chase your dreams.
I won't make you watch me drink my water. Okay. Okay. Let me set up a little more too.
I mean, so in other words, like all while you were a lawyer, did you want to be a writer?
Yes. The question that I'm asked so often is, how did you make the change from law school to writing? And, was that a big leap for you? And really, the people who know me the best will ask the question, why did you go to law school in the first place? Because writing was always so important to me, and from the time I was in the first grade and really could write, well enough to write a story, I was writing poems and stories and keeping journals. And so my mother's a retired librarian. We spent our summers going to the library 2 or 3 times a week, my sister and I. So that was such an important part of who I was. I think the reason that I went to law school is actually the reason that a lot of people go to law school, and that they want to achieve so much that they choose the surefire, societal approved path to success. And so going to law school, it's like, okay, I can take the LSAT. I'm pretty sure I can do well on the LSAT. I can get it. I have these straight A's in college, and so let's do something that everyone can recognize as achievement. And I think that happens more with law school, because you can, you major in anything, and you can just be a good writer and smart and do well in college, and you go to law school. Whereas if you really knew what you wanted to do and were really certain that you wanted to achieve, you would go to med school, because then you would be very sure. It's like the law school is the catch-all sort of. But so I went, and I never have regretted the decision to go. I went to the University of Virginia. I loved my 3 years in Charlottesville. I loved studying the law. I loved it, the intellectual, academic side of it. But once I got to my large, New York City law firm, and was in the litigation department, and I instantly hated it, and I knew that I wanted to get out, and discovered that misery can be very motivating, because I was motivated to write a book while I was practicing. I was very motivated to pay back my loans. I had just under $100,000 worth of debt, so I really wanted to just clear that, pay all those loans back, and then follow my true dream of being a writer. So had a 5-year plan and kind of stuck to it, and went from there. But as far as this idea of following your dreams, or pursuing your true passion, and I think that is one, because I sort of it took me a while to get there. It took going to law school and then practicing law and living. It really took turning 30 and deciding this I wasn't sort of meeting my destiny. That decision and that time in my life was so critical to just who I am and as a person. I think a lot of people might experience that younger, and some people maybe it comes in the form of a midlife crisis. But I think we all understand that moment in that time when we ask ourselves, am I meeting my destiny? Am I living the life I'm meant to live? And that question that really and that whole theme, I think, has emerged in my fiction. at least with 3 novels that I can think of. Certainly in my first, and absolutely in this one, when Shay asks herself those questions and really takes a hard look at her life. And I mean, is this life just, did I get here through safety and convenience, or is it really where I should be? And I think a lot of people ask themselves those questions in relationships and in their career. So it's definitely important to me as a theme. Sorry, I'm trailing off and rambling. Sorry.
No.
Edit that.
Yeah, we will. So we talked about this a little bit, but yeah, I think you're pretty prolific. I mean, what do you have a specific writing routine that, like, every day you're writing, or how does that work for you?
I do. I write when I'm in the cycle of writing, as opposed to gearing up for a tour or doing the publicity, because it's very cyclical, of course. But then I write every day. Generally I might not write on the weekends, or almost never on Sundays, but sometimes Saturdays. But because I have small children, and well, they're not that small now, but they're getting up there. But so it's impractical to write on the weekends, but otherwise, I work every day, and write, and try to stay in the flow of the story. I think it's one question that I get almost at every signing, and often in the media, that's so interesting to me. You didn't ask it, but is how do you find time to write, which it's always been fascinating, because and I answer it, of course. Oh, well, I write during the day. I have an assistant, and the kids are at school, and I treat it like a job. But it always strikes me as peculiar, because I don't think of other professions. You wouldn't get that question, like, how do you find time to be an editor? Or how do you find time to be an accountant, or how do you find time to be a dentist? And it's my job. It's my full-time job. I work 50 hours a week. I find time to do it because it's what I do for a living. And I think I've often wondered why that is, and I think there's 2 explanations. One, either that there's a very romantic notion of being a writer, and writing fiction, and the story just spills out of you, and you can just do it in the weekends, or whenever, and at night. And the other explanation, I think, is that so many people do write on the side, and so many people do have a book in them and view it as a hobby, and so that's logical to think that perhaps it's the same with all writers. But it's a struggle for me. I feel that I'm a slow writer, and I have to put in at least 8 hours a day, or I just won't finish a book. I won't make my deadline. So are my answers long-winded enough for you?
I know they're totally perfect.
Better than yes or no, right?
Yeah, we prefer that, because it gives us material to work with. So last question. Of course, I have to ask what it was like seeing something borrowed adapted into film. Was that a process for you to enjoy?
Yeah, it was. I think the word surreal is so off. It's overused, but it really fits the range of emotions that I went through as I first walked on set and first saw those characters in their wardrobe, in their and in the scene in their bedroom, and I thought, like, this is crazy that this book, that this world that I envisioned and once was the only person who knew about these people, and now these movie stars are playing these characters, and there was this just momentary, it wasn't even a moment, it was like a few seconds lapse where I felt almost as if the characters had come to life and were sitting there in front of me. And then to go through the process was so much fun and so interesting to just learn how that world works. And I enjoyed the collaborative side of it, because writing fiction is sort of, you're alone and you make all those decisions and you don't have to make those compromises. And so that was that was interesting. And I loved being involved, and feel grateful to the producers for involving me, because they didn't have to contractually. It was just sort of by invitation that I was there. And then, of course, when the premiere happened and you walk into that theater, with my mother and my husband and my sister and my friends, and saw this movie, it was amazing. And I think they did a really a really solid job of capturing you know, the relationships and just the world of how complicated female friendship can be. So I was pleased with it. Did you like it? Did you see
Yes,
it? You did?
I've seen it.
It's pretty good. It's easy to dismiss the genre and to as you know, but it's you know, I thought they did a really great job, and I think that all romantic comedies are not, you know, you can't sort of summarize. You can't take all romantic comedies and put them into a box. I mean, you have When Harry Met Sally, which, you know, I think men love, and very, you know, anyway, you can edit it out. But it's frustrating to me also to say this too, that I think that, you know, there's this assumption that romantic comedies are all sort of insipid, and then these books, if they have a certain hue of the cover, well, then they're not going to have much depth either. And I think, you know, I think that's a dangerous assumption for people to make, and, you know, so anyway, don't put that in there. But that's between me and you.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And I think also between me and you, can I say something?
Yeah.
Between us, but don't use it. You know, I think when my book came out, in right on the heels of Bridget Jones' Diary, you know, the book was called Rolling the Dice, and it's like this melancholic ending, and it's sort of like an atypical female friendship, and the heroine's doing the bad thing, and yet they put it in a pink book with a sparkling diamond ring on it, and I think that made my career, you know, set it in motion. It sold millions of copies that they wouldn't have otherwise sold. But at the same time, I think that it's been difficult to connect with readers who will really appreciate the layers of these stories. You know, I'm not writing great literary fiction, but it's more nuanced than your average pink book with a sparkling ring on it. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense.
And I think that if you're looking for that now, as people still are with my books, if you pick up the one and only thinking that you're getting that, you're going to be, you know, you might be disappointed, because it's not a frolicking good time. People aren't drinking martinis and shopping for shoes, and you know. Anyway, I just have to tell you that because you're Kirkus. That's why I'm telling you that. I don't usually go in that direction, and when I'm asked about chick lit, I usually just dismiss the question. But you're Kirkus. So there you go.
No, that's great. I mean, there is more nuance to your work than.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, great. We did a great job with this one, and
you'll make me sound good.
We will make you sound great, and all the rest of it. So, thank you for your time.
Okay, yeah, and then let me know what you want, like if you want me to post it, or, you know, once we're all finished with it, or how I can.
Yeah.
Send it out.
Help us do some social media on it. That would be great.
Yeah, just let me know. So,
okay, we will.
It was nice to meet you.
Thanks, Emily.
Okay,
You too, Emily. Okay, have a good day.
You
Bye-bye.
too.